Hi, I'm Kerry Barrett. I'm the owner-founder of Kerry Barrett Incorporated, and you are listening to the S.M.E's podcast.
You are now listening to the next great small business podcast. Welcome to the S.M.E Stories podcast, where it is all about small businesses in Canada. And here's your host, Ken Alfred.
All right, guys, we have Kerry Barrett from Kerry Barrett Inc. Kerry, how you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you for having me. How are you?
Well, it's the first podcast we're recording in January 2025, so hopefully yourself, your loved ones had a great Christmas and holiday season.
We absolutely did, and likewise, now we're back to the grind, I guess, aren't we?
Tier. That's all I can say. Is that whole thing, because I usually like the 2 weeks leading up to Christmas and then the 2 weeks after, or the week after Christmas, because that's when people don't seem to respond so quickly, so you can just kind of relax and family would come over, and then you want work to start again because family will drive you crazy at times. So
also that, yes, there was a period I really took some time off. I have not taken time off really during the holidays. I mean, yes, I didn't work on Christmas. We celebrate Christmas and New Year's and stuff, but I was always working in the week in between. And this year is the first year that I really tried to dedicate that week to doing non-work related things. I was moderately successful. Not 100%, but I was better than I was last year. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I noticed too, is that when I first started this podcast, I'll make this really quick. When I first started this podcast, I reached out to, I guess one of the good things about social media. I know there's a lot of bad to it, but one of the good things was you could literally see all your family, friends, maybe former coworkers, what they're kind of doing. Right. So a lot of it was, okay, I thought about doing a podcast about small business. Let me just reach out to them. And, a bunch of episodes was really good. But then I noticed now over the last year or so, I don't really have to chase as much as actually like either I'm getting messages directly from the owners like yourself or actual PR firms that just reach out to me and say, hey, we want someone on your show. I said, okay. Right. So no. But that's how I found it really odd that I kept getting a lot of those emails coming in. So
over the holidays,
I'm thinking, don't you guys take a break? Right.
Yeah. Listen, the media machine never stops, I suppose.
Well, yeah, once we get into, speaking of the media machine, you got a great story here. So listeners, I mean, Kerry's going to walk through basically, she is an Emmy award-winning broadcaster. So we got someone from the mainstream right here who's worked on almost every possible, news station that you can imagine. I think I saw that you worked for, I'll let you get started with that. Okay. So Kerry Barrett Inc., what's your story?
Thank you. Yes. So I did. I worked for the left-leaning places and the right-leaning places. So equal opportunity. Hey, you said mainstream media. It's taken a bit of a beating lately, but I still have a great love for it. A little bit about me. I started my broadcasting career back in 2000, and I was in the business for 20 some odd years. I started at a very small station I'm based in the United States in Wichita Falls, Texas, and then finished my career at NBC in New York City. And you're right, took me all over the country. I was in Florida and Texas and South Carolina and Utah and Arizona, Philadelphia. And when I left that business, for a number of different reasons, I really had no idea what I was going to do, but I knew I really still have this belief in the power of media, not just TV. I worked in TV, but broadly speaking, your Forbeses, your entrepreneurs, your podcasts, certainly. And I also had a skill set that I had developed, which is speaking effectively and compellingly on camera, which, by the way, I was terrible and terrified of when I first started. And so I've taken those two areas that I've developed such expertise in over the course of 20 years. And now I help business owners, small business owners, grow visibility, credibility, authority, at scale with new audiences through teaching them how to generate their own, how to get a piece in Forbes and how to get on the next podcast and maybe how to get a live segment on NBC News. And then I also teach the same business owners, but also CEOs, executives, founder types, how to speak effectively on camera. There is a little bit of cross population there, because if you're doing an interview on your local TV station or CNBC, or the Canadian broadcast, the CBC, right? Is that what it is in Canada? CBC, yeah.
Yep, CBC is one.
One of them. You have to be able to speak compellingly and effectively on camera, and that particular skill set is applicable in so many areas now, especially that so much of our work is done online and through a camera lens, much like the way that we're recording this podcast now. So I've, again, taken, to answer in a very long-winded way, taken the skills that I've curated over those 20 years and now use them to help business owners and executives grow, at scale in trust and visibility, et cetera.
Okay, so perfect. So you kind of touched upon so it's almost like you're coaching both the small business owner and the corporate, maybe potential CEO. Are those the core main services you provide, or do you provide any other things? I know I've seen some like type of coaches, they might do, whether strictly for video or not, they might just try to get, their resumes and all that sort of stuff, or, like corporate media training. Is that basically kind of what the services you're providing with these guys?
Yeah, it is. And I hesitate to use the word media training, because like a lot of times people think of that as meaning I need to learn how to handle some sort of crisis communications in the media, which I don't really do. Super stressful, and I've hesitated to put my toe into that water. But for example, I will work with a C-suite level executive at, I've worked with executives at Johnson & Johnson and AmeriLife, which is a big insurance marketing organization here in the United States, teaching them to speak effectively on camera. Now, how they may utilize that particular skill varies. Some of them are doing virtual panel discussions and virtual events. I have a client right now who's in the wealth tech space who does a lot of virtual speaking to, in high stakes environments, for example, to the UN. And then I also work with business owners who are, I got to get my face on Instagram, but I hate it and it makes me cringe and I don't know how to do it well. And so my programs are, the way that I work with them is slightly different depending on what their ultimate goal is and what their obviously current skill level is. I can't take some people start at ground zero and some people already have developed some skill. So I create a program that's designed to bring them from where they are to where they want to go. Generally speaking, it's about 3 months. But yes, again, in a long-winded way, to answer your two questions, PR coaching or publicity coaching and media training, as you put it, are the two services that I genuinely offer. I do some video production and I do some voiceover work and that kind of stuff, but those are one-offs.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable. I think that the challenge too is that, especially if anything now, like especially for any type of owner or anything that wants to get their name out there, or in some cases, as they cringe, their face out there, even on the social media space, like you said, it just brought me to the fact that, one of the questions I might have just generally, and so you said you help people, maybe with their social media in terms of being more present on the camera. What filter can make me look 30 years younger?
Oh God.
I don't know.
You know what? If I had that filter, first of all, if that existed, I would be all over it.
Me too.
It doesn't exist, my friend. I'm sorry, but you already look young and fabulous.
I have that
That's
on
the right
film,
answer,
so we're
isn't
good.
it?
No one says film anymore. I got that on hard drive, cloud. There, I got it on the cloud. So there we go. We're good.
There you go.
So, anyways, back to your stuff. So, so currently, how much staff do you have working for you right now? Because you're working with all these different executives and sometimes leadership. Like, how do you manage that whole thing? Do you have like a big team, or are you a solopreneur?
No.
How many people are you working with?
Yeah. I have a couple of vendors that I use, video production people, editors. I have a VA that works for me basically full time. I don't have, I'm still doing a lot of this myself. I'm the one who's providing the service. Generally, I'm the one who's doing the marketing and answering the emails and all that other stuff. I'm in the process of, I should say, automating more so that there's not so much manual labor behind the scenes for me in terms of the way I deliver my services and the way I schedule and, track data, which frankly, I'm just now beginning to do. So yeah, I don't have a huge team. It's me. almost 24/7 right now.
So when people reach out to you, they get you. They don't get
They get me.
bunch of,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's good. So in
Yeah.
that case, then, so you're based out of, I think you said the U.S. and New Jersey. Is that right? Like, you
Yes,
plan
that is.
on expanding anywhere else as well, or do you want to still keep it a small shop at this point, right? Until you have everything automated.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, obviously, growth is in the works for me. I'm not just functioning in New Jersey. I do have clients that are global, in Europe, and I have some in Asia as well. I would like to grow more. Mostly my service is provided in an online or digital capacity. Again, I'm doing, video calls, and my trainings are done via video and that sort of stuff. So I am able to deliver, everywhere. What I will tell you is there's been a number of pivots that have happened for me. Some intentional and deliberate, some not so much. Some as a necessary recalibration after a failure or a mistake. And I went into this sort of business experience without, I would say much, but let's be honest, without any knowledge about business or how it's run or how to grow it or even the language that's used in that world. And so, yes, to answer your question, I would like to grow, but I want to make sure that I understand my audience. I'm going to grow now at the speed of cash versus what I did when I first started, which is dumping a bunch of my own money into it and then realizing, a little too late that I'm going down the wrong path, and I've gone down the wrong path for too long. I made a lot of really egregious mistakes when I first started, which I'm sort of beginning to realize. I guess everybody, for the most part, does. I was not prepared for that.
I mean, it's so understandable. I think a lot of owners, like everyone, including myself, have made a lot of mistakes where you procure stuff that you think you might use or you thought was a good idea at the time that
Yeah.
suddenly don't make the most sense, right? Because when I first got into this, I wanted to get into with this whole podcasting thing. I started this, like I said, I mentioned I started during the pandemic actually,
Yeah.
and I started going through this because originally I was doing mobile app website testing for clients, right? I'd just be going
Mhm.
through their sites, going through their apps, voicing what I'm seeing, what holes they might have, or anything like that. Speaking of which, your site, you might need to remove the Google Podcast logo on your website because I think they've discontinued Google Podcasts. So
That's good to know. Thank you.
listeners, you can definitely hear Kerry's show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all the other major podcast players. Look at that plug for you right there, right? So,
Thank you.
but yeah, like,
Appreciate that.
well, no problem, right? And so when I started getting into this, I thought, okay, maybe I'll do that. Maybe doing some video stuff too, which I didn't
Yeah.
really wasn't the plan. I don't know if it's still a plan at this point, but I've spent hundreds of dollars on a camera, and then I looked out for office space to try to record stuff. And I remember during this time, there's still the pandemic, I had to have my kids try to help me trying to record, trying to do like a 2 camera shoot where they're using a digital camera, one's using a cell
Yeah.
phone, trying to see if I can make it look good. And I'm the worst director because I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, okay,
Right.
I'm supposed to do this voiceover, but they want me to do it for like YouTube or something like that. So I'm like trying to do
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff, and I, yelling at my kids, and I fired them already. And they're what at that time they're what 8 and 10. So
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a tough life lesson to learn at a young age.
yes,
You're
yes.
fired.
So it's one of those funny things that I think that's what you have to try to. I guess the message we're trying to get to some of these other owners is that, okay, pull on the brakes on wanting to buy things. Yes, it's
Yeah.
fun to buy some stuff, especially if you can
Yeah.
write it off. But
Hmm.
if you have no revenue coming in to pay it off, I don't think you want to. That's not the way you want to start, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I would say, like, even beyond, equipment, which I haven't made too many mistakes there. My mistake would have been, um, my biggest mistake was hiring a marketing agency before I really had an offer and knew, who I was talking to. And I used them to try and sell some courses for me, which ended up not going anywhere at a very, very, um, a very high dollar amount with zero return. And it's almost that sort of sunk fallacy where, at least certainly I fell into that, where I've already gone so far down this path. It's scary to think it's all been a mistake and to have to turn around and come back to square one and figure it all out again. And so I sort of put my blinders on. And there is a difference between persistence and resistance. I thought I was being persistent. I was really just resisting the fact that I had made a mistake, and the sooner I doubled back, the quicker I was going to recoup my loss. So I kept going down that path, and it was, hundreds of man hours. And I will be honest with you, multiple tens of thousands of dollars, multiple, that I lost as a result of not looking at what was going on around me, which was, you don't really understand this is where it started for me. You don't understand your target audience. You're not speaking to them in their language rather, and talking to them about things that matter. For me, when I first started, I mentioned I didn't have any business experience. And so I would talk to people about, showing up effectively on camera. Well, why? What does it do for me? And me, as a broadcaster, I'm like, well, duh. I mean, what do you mean? What does it do for you? How do you not get what it does for you? And that doesn't resonate with people.
No, absolutely.
I didn't say it that way, but that's what I'm thinking. Like, I don't know how to describe why this is important to you in words that matter to you.
Yeah.
And so while we can easily get, I think as a new business owner or somebody who's thinking about starting a business, we can get into our own area of expertise and why it's important, failing to recognize, is it a problem? Is my audience aware that it's a problem? How do I talk to them about it? Where do I jump in terms of educating them about it? Because really, social media is my primary marketing engine. I mean, it's where I drive all my leads and stuff, and podcasts and media opportunities. But I made an egregious mistake at the beginning, which is not understanding who they are and what they needed and how my solution could help them. And then understanding not just their demographics, who they are and what they do, but their psychographics. What are the things that they're thinking about? What are the things that keep them up at night as business owners? I didn't dive at all into that. And instead, I arbitrarily picked this product or service that I was going to sell, and it ended up not resonating, not because it wasn't valuable, not because it wasn't put together well, it was, but because I didn't understand how to talk to people about it.
Yeah, like you said, so we make a lot of mistakes on that. I've made a couple of mistakes myself too, and one of the ones was I seen I'm getting a lot of these emails too, even over the holidays and even as we speak, where everyone says, "Hey, we can grow your podcasting listeners, get you more subscribers, yada yada." I remember doing this a few years ago, where they said, "Yeah, we'll get you we'll bump up your listener audience." I said, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So I said, "Oh, let's try it out." So we tried it for 1 month. I think it was dirt cheap at the same time, right? So it was I think it was $50 or something like that. And it went up to a few hundred listeners that I'm used to seeing. I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah. So I'm thinking that's great. And then when I stopped paying them, the numbers went back down. So like, okay.
Yeah.
So they artificially inflated my numbers to make me seem like I had more listeners. When as soon as you stop paying them, they suddenly disappear, because my rationale is that, okay, if people hear the show, they hear the podcast, if they like the quality of the content, they're going to subscribe, they're going to follow it. Yeah. So if all these hundreds of people that are now signing up or saying that the views and the downloads were there, but they're not subscribing, I'm like, okay, then that's probably not real people that they're trying to do that anyways.
100%. It's bots, and they're running podcasts through engagement farms so that they're artificially inflating the numbers. And it's actually become a scourge on LinkedIn as well. Yeah. There's a lot of and if you plunk around on LinkedIn, which is my primary platform, you'll see people talking about it. But it's generally people who offer LinkedIn ghostwriting services. And listen, I fell for this stuff too, 100%. It's part of where that multiple tens of thousands of dollars of money went. But they'll write your stuff for you, and they'll guarantee a certain number of impressions, and they'll guarantee a certain amount of viewer growth, of follower growth. And really what you realize is that, they're writing your stuff, but they're running it through an engagement farm or a bot factory or a pod farm that they have going on behind the scenes. And then, oh, wow, suddenly they're creating my content. And I went from getting like 2, people commenting, one of them was my own and the other one was my mom, to suddenly 30, 40, 50, 60. And it looks like it's being driven because the content is so great. Generally, it's templated, formulaic content anyway, but they're running it through. It's the same thing that you were talking about with the podcast. And you have to have, your eyes open for these red flags. If something seems too good to be true, it genuinely is. And I know we all want to believe that everybody has our best interests at heart and there's nobody that's, out to fool us or pull one over on us. I have found, unfortunately, that not to be the case. You would think with 20 years of journalistic experience and like sniffing out false stories and false narratives and catching people in,
Fake news, right?
lies
Finding
or
all that,
I would,
you know?
I would have just noticed this,
No, it's
but I didn't. And I felt really bad
yeah.
about not noticing it and felt really guilty for a very long time.
Well, yeah, I'll tell you this last one, and then I promise we're going to go back to talk about.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I love this.
I went this. I got reached out a few years ago too to say, hey, I don't know why I thought of this, but they said, we can turn you into a cartoon character.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, okay, let me just try it out. So I paid like $50, and I was thinking, all right, maybe just have it for a good thumbnail. So they created this little thing right here. Camera can see this. Now, first, you don't notice the thing is cut. So Northway Capital Group, which is my company name, I don't know if you has been cut off.
Yeah.
There's a picture of me with, I think, holding up my pointer finger or a thumb. I can't know what that is.
I from a distance it looks like a thumb, but where it's placed, the placement makes it look like a pointer finger. Yeah.
Although they did make my arm look a lot bigger, which is nice. But either case, so I paid this guy $50 to do this, right? He gave me a couple of different photos, and I said, "Hey, can you do one of my family?" I thought that'd be a really cool. So not even a business expense. It's more like, okay, I'll do it for my family, right?
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, okay, no problem. Just send us." It was like, I think $50 just to do 2 of these, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like $75 or $100 or something like that. So I sent the money. Never heard back from it.
Are you serious?
Took my money and ran, right? So I was like, "Ooh, I got fooled." But it's weird because you actually physically got something, right? It's one thing when you get scammed and they give you nothing. It's another thing when they kind of give you something. So they lure you in. They give you what you ask for, and then when you try to top up or ask more, they just don't return the favor. So unfortunately, we make a lot of mistakes. So sorry. Back to this now. So Kerry, so what has been like, aside from some of those biggest mistakes, now that you've kind of fixed some of those ones here, what is your current business expense that you're currently seeing right now running your business?
My biggest expense item right now is, oh my gosh. See, I am not great tracking data. I'm a business coach. That is hands down my biggest business expense. I tried to go it my own way for a long time, and I realized that we do what we do, and then we have to not be afraid to ask for help on the parts that we don't understand or that we're not good at. And you won't start there generally. You'll start plinking away and doing a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then as you begin to build, and I'm not talking about massive building, I'm just enough to where now you need a little more direction, because when I first started, I was doing this thing and that thing and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And it was all sort of like piecemealed together. I felt more like a freelancer than I did an actual business owner. My business didn't feel like a business. So my business coach is the most expensive expense for me right now. And also, I couldn't do without her. But my business is also, there's a fairly high profit margin. I don't have full-time employees. I have vendors that I use. I work from home. I need my computer and I need my camera and I need my lights and my gear, but there's no inventory that I need to provide. So I have, it's very easy for me to scale up and down. As I need to.
Pretty cool. So you kind of talked about that, like LinkedIn is your current social media. I know, but when I go to your website, you're on everything. You're even on Pinterest for all I know. So I usually look up. Usually when my wife goes on Pinterest, it's to look up, stuff for like clothing, right? Or I do that too at times. So I was surprised. I'm like, wow, Pinterest. I never really thought of it, right? So what other things do you really do on social media that really gets your name out there?
Yeah, so Pinterest is actually not a bad platform. It's not like Instagram or TikTok, but it's not a bad platform for course creators, and they allow you to do video there as well. So yeah, your wife is not in my corner of Pinterest, probably. If you're in my corner of Pinterest, you're a business owner looking for other sort of business information or services. LinkedIn, like I said, is my main driver. I used to try and do all of the things. I had somebody who was managing my YouTube and creating content there, and I had somebody who was managing my Instagram and creating content there, and I had Facebook and blah, 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 blah. It ended up being that, again, it was all sort of held together with duct tape. There was a lot of tactics, not a lot of strategy. My content wasn't aligned with, my newsletter, for example, or what I was, selling, or if there was a promo, or it wasn't all aligned. It was all sort of like each was very siloed in its own space. And so I basically shut my efforts down on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, and really went all in on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has certainly changed over the years, but I do now take the video content that I create for LinkedIn and I repurpose it on the other platforms just so I have something there. To be clear, I don't expect that to bring in business, but I do at least want to keep my accounts current and not have them die on me.
No.
So LinkedIn is really where I have driven most of my leads and sales, and it is constantly evolving. It used to be that LinkedIn was used as strictly a sort of networking and it's a job board, a glorified job board. It's very much changed now, and there are a lot of people on there who are business owners who are growing businesses, providing services. There's great community there as well. It can be a bit of a slog. You can't post there and expect people to show up automatically. I was shocked when it didn't work that way. You actually have to put some time into understanding who your audience is and connecting with them and engaging with them in a way that's meaningful, not, rote or nice comment or thanks for sharing.
Yeah. No one was banging on your inbox with piles of money saying we want it.
So disappointed. I didn't understand why. No one was showing up at my doorstep with suitcases full of cash. What the heck?
Yeah, I know. But,
it's rude of them, really, don't you think?
But no, it's pretty cool when you think about it, right? Because I think the challenge that we have is, like, one of the best people I ever hired was, like you said, another vendor that I use is obviously for social media, because I got no idea for social media. What the hell's a hashtag? I don't know.
Yeah,
but I'm sure it's something. Yeah. You mean the tic-tac-toe, Sam? That's a hashtag. I'm like, okay, yeah.
What used to be called the pound sign.
Pound sign. I used to work the call centers, and I would say pound or something. But I hired someone to really do like the video editing on my shows and the social media as well, and she's really awesome at it, because I got no skill set for that. I could try. Yeah. It's not going to go well. And it's when it gets to the point that when you have friends or family that are scrolling through their social media feed, and they're like, and they see me, they're like, hey, I know that guy. I'm like, yeah. Of course, they're sitting next to me. I'm like, of course, thank you. I guess I'm paying her right, because other people start to see me. But it's interesting to see that. So, and where can people reach out to you, and where can they find you?
Oh, the easiest thing to do is to find me on LinkedIn. You can find me just by searching my name, Kerry Barrett, Kerry Barrett, and also on my website under the resources tab. There's a lot of free resources there, and you can schedule a free strategy call with me there as well.
All right, Kerry, thank you very much for being on the show. It's very much appreciate for having you on.
Thank you for having me. This was great. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed speaking with you.
Hey you, do you need a voiceover? Well, look no farther. Northway Capital Group has your answer. Commercials and explainer videos, AVR and voicemail, health and wellness, corporate training and e-learning, announcements, documentaries, and biography. Contact us on social media or email us at northwaycapitalgroup@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the S.M.E Stories podcast, which is owned by Northway Capital Group. Please follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Northway Capital Group.